A lot of new information focusing on more like when a student turns 18 until after they exit school. It's going to talk about why you're in transition and when you got to do things, who you have to talk to, those kind of things. So one of the big things to think about is what's their plan for the future? Where is a student going to be working? Where are they going to be living? Where are they going to fill up their day with playing and social life, right? So those are it's sort of divided into this thing called work, live, and play, this big global thing, and that's everybody's life. If you break your life down, that's pretty much what everybody does. This is going to talk about what school was and how you're moving from classes and services in the high school to employment, education, and things that you're going to do after in your adult life.
I was just thinking, in terms of the 18 to 22-year-old population, just to kind of give a little bit of background, we have several transition programs in the district, and those are for kids that are cognitively impaired, SWEP and Center House.
We have a variety of programs. We have a supported transition program. We have another transition program at South Elgin,
Yes, South Elgin.
There's 2 different programs there. Depends on the level of independence, what kind of supports they may need, of what would be the best fit and where they would get the most benefit for them with it.
But I also wanted to say that you probably know that your students are eligible to stay in school until the day before they turn 22. And a lot of the things like we're talking about can be accomplished at the high schools. Even for kids who maybe have gone there for 4 years, they can still stay on. They don't have to leave the high school. So if you have LD kids, cross-cat kids, emotional disturbances, those are the kinds of things where you might be thinking, well, he's 18, he could earn his diploma. I guess he could be done. You don't have to be done. You can stay in the school and you can be creative about what types of things might help continue to improve on that transition process for your kids.
So again, that for people that weren't here for the first one, this transition process is really thinking about what the end is going to be and then backwards chaining, looking at that's where I want to be, how do I get there? What are those steps that I would take to get there? So that's how you want to do it. The next part is to look at what do I want for my child's future and do we have the same dreams? I had several students that always said, I want to do this. I can name like one student for years. She said, I want to work in a grocery store and I want to bag in a grocery store. That was not her parents' dream. The student was capable of doing so much more than that. So during that time, we tried, from the time she was 15, 16, we started different kind of job trainings with her. Her mother thought that she would do great working with children. So we had her try job training with kids in the daycare. She hated it because she was good with the kids. She did not like to wipe their nose. She got sick all the time from working with those kids. Hated it. She thought she loved the kids. She loves playing games with kids, but when you actually had to do work, of matching up what those skills were, that wasn't a dream for her. Mom's dream it was. Then Mom said, I think that she could really do well at being customer service and taking people, she's very social, and she was great at this. She was very social. People loved talking to her. So we got her a job working at the rec center, one of the rec centers, and she would check people in and out of the health club. And she did that, was great at that, but didn't like it because there wasn't enough social interaction because those people wanted to get on to their exercising. So they weren't able to sit there and talk to her, and that was really what made her life fulfilling, is people talking to her. There were probably about 10 other jobs that we tried through this process to see what would match her and what would not. We finally said she worked in as a waitress in a restaurant. She did a lot of different kind of things. didn't match up to what she wanted to do. She goes, oh, I don't really like that. I don't like that. It makes me nervous. I'm going to drop something. Went through all these different things. Finally said, let's just try this job that she told us from the beginning she wanted. She went there. She went to the store. She became a bagger. Even though she could do so much more, her dream was she wanted to do it. And the reason it was her dream, because those people talked to her all the time. She had the social interaction. She had the people skills. She got Star Employee of the Year every year. She got all sorts of things that she wanted to do. Even though she's capable of way more, she was far happier doing this job because that was her dream, and all those little components fit together to build her life and boost it into what she wanted.
A nice
And
match.
Mom finally said, you know what? It was my dream, not my daughter's dream. And she kept telling me that I want to do this, and I want to do this, and I want to do this. And I didn't listen. And then I finally let her try that, which I know that she can do more. And now she's the happiest kid I've ever seen. And she did that, you know. So it just depends how it's going through there. And you really have to try out as many jobs and see what's going to be a fit and what makes a student fulfilled in their whole life. Okay? That's just kind of
A segue.
a little segue. Transition should again be the centerpiece of the IEP, should be what drives your IEP. You should do that first. It should guide where everybody else is working for, because if your student wants to be a chef, like we talked about earlier, then everybody should know that and should be trying to figure out what things that student's going to need to learn to be successful at being a chef.
And a transition plan is written for a student, but in most cases it encompasses great deals of responsibilities of the family. Portions of a transition plan cannot be accomplished during the school day. It might be working on chores at home. It might be learning to care for the family pet. Well, we don't have a pet at school. So you as parents and family members should be very involved in the transition process. It's not like an IEP is usually going to be goals happening at school. The transition plan is a sort of a 24-hour day plan with the services listed in there about the types of things that the student is going to do, whether it's at school or at home, things that the family is going to be doing, things that the school is going to be doing. And it's that all coming together, working together
partnership,
for the students.
Right, it's a partnership and working closely together to see what's going to be best for the student to achieve where they want to go. So again, looking at what's available
Like it
after
away.
school, we talked about in the previous one some other issues, but as you get closer to that 18, you really got to figure out what kind of funding is going to be available. How are these things that my child wants and what my child needs going to be paid for? Is there funding? Where are those fundings going to come from? Then there's also support. And what kind of support is out there that can help my child or my student? And how do I access those? Who do I talk to? What is the paperwork I have to do? How do I make these things happen? That's family's responsibility. We'll connect you with those services, but some of it can't come from us because after they're 18, the child is in charge of their life, right? So they are a legally competent adult. Sometimes they won't even talk to us, right? You know, so those are some things that you have to be aware of and be prepared for. There's no special ed after school. You were going to say something, Lori?
Finish.
Okay.
I do, but you finish.
There's no special ed after school, so you have to be prepared for that. Services are not offered to you like they are in the high schools and the schools before. You have to, the student has to seek it out, the families have to seek it out. No one's going to say, oh, I see you're struggling, we can give you this support. Schools are to help those things and to identify those and try and figure out the supports to be successful. After school, they are not those mandates. The work training is limited. So if during the school time you have job coaching, you have different kind of things like that. You have different vocational evaluations that can be done. We do job match. We spend a lot of time talking to the student. the job coaching, again, is limited. After you exit school, there's going to be very little funding for that. You'll probably have to self-pay for it. And if you did, it would be maybe a couple hours a week, at the most, but probably more like 45 minutes is the most that I've really seen anybody get. Then there's other things you need to start looking into, which is SSI, Social Security, Supplemental Social Security Income, and SSDI, which is another, yes.
Social Security Disability Insurance.
And Medicaid and food stamps and things like that. So you need to remember this one big thing. After they're 18, even if they're living in your house, they're considered a household of one. So all those applications are going to say how many people live in your house, even though they might be living with you still. That household, they're going to say one, because they are a household of one. They are their own independent person because of that. Okay, so when you're filling out the application, you can do that. SSI, like if you couldn't get SSI before a student was 18, that's because they look at the family's income. After they turn 18, it looks at that person's income, not at the family's income.
Do you guys know what SSI is? Supplemental Security Income? Okay, good.
Then there's some heating programs of people that, some other kind of programs that are out there for anybody that has, that needs some help. Phone programs, there's some people that you can get a free phone sometimes. Then there's these agencies, like DRS is the Division of Rehabilitation Services. And then there's PUNS, which would come from the, what's called a PASS agent. That's for people that would be cognitively impaired. In the adult world, they call that developmentally disabled. So there's criteria for that they would have to meet to qualify for that. PUNS means priority of urgency of needs for services. It is a list that you need to be on to even be considered to possibly have a chance that they may pull your name out of that magic hat to receive some services.
Some funding.
Or to apply for the service, actually.
Yeah.
You don't even get it. You would be...
You get the opportunity.
You get the opportunity to apply for that service. Then there's mental health supports. And there's those mental health supports after they exit school. If someone was going to try and get mental health supports, that they would have to have a chronic mental health issue on the DSM thing, like depression. They would also have had to have been hospitalized in the past 2 years in order to qualify by the state for that. The adult services, this is a big one that is a huge difference from school. They are not required to provide services. If a student or a family starts missing appointments, they will drop them and cancel them and say, sorry, we told you what you needed to do. Schools can't do that. We're going to keep working with you and try and figure out what the best way is. Adult services, you don't show up, you don't have that, they say bye-bye. So those are things that you have to remember with, when you're starting to work in that adult world. It's a huge change from what you were in the schools. Okay?
I wanted to just say about the DOORS office that we have a DOORS counselor that works with our district. We have a grant from the Department of Rehab that our district receives every year. And the way that that service is offered is it's basically a vocational rehabilitation service. And I find that a lot of, I sort of semi-coordinate the portions of the grant for our district, second largest district in the state of Illinois. And a lot of families are very resistant to sign up for this service. Some students don't meet the criteria. You have to have the profile, the student has to have a profile that looks like working independently in the community is that likely next step down the road. Not the criteria at the point of getting an open case with DOORS, but the belief is, and that the family is on board with, someday your student's going to go to Jewel and bag groceries by himself.
Or wherever the job.
Or wherever, right. But a lot of families are very, like I said, they're very hesitant to sign up for this. It's one of the few agencies that's an adult service agency that will come to the IEP meetings meet your kids, follow them the whole time then they're in public school, create a file for them so that when they graduate, that the counselor may be the same counselor even, so that counselor may remember seeing your son or daughter at IEP meetings for years, but it could be a counselor, but that file will still exist.
Right.
So I guess I'd like to ask you personally, if you know of this agency, if your kids are open with doors and you've had a positive experience, share this with your friends. We don't have very many students in our district open right now. We should have more students open. If nothing else, it's a like I say, it's an information gathering base for when your kids are not in school anymore. This is somebody who will know your student from the in-school to the out-school.
And it also is a good thing, even if your student is working and may not need as much support, but they may have a dream of going to college, right? So that they have they have a path that they want to. You want to?
I was gonna, yeah.
Oh, sorry.
No, you go ahead. You go ahead.
So they might have a dream to go to college, so that they want to be a forklift driver. They want to be a chef. They want to be, they want to be
Beautician.
a beautician. They could help pay for that college if they're open beforehand. While they're still in school, they use the IEP to approve that. After they exit school, you have to go get many, many things to prove. They have to get psychologicals. They have to do many different things to do it. But if they're open while they're still in school, that will help. Even if they aren't getting a lot of support until they're ready to exit and maybe go into those colleges, they could possibly support. I can't guarantee that they will because they don't have anything to do with the school district. That's their own little world that they live in, and they choose who they're going to do that for. But it is an option and a potential thing.
What is DOORS?
DRS is the division of...
Okay, DRS.
DRS is doors.
What was DORS?
The DOR, yeah.
Well, they rename
changed their-
themselves
they've
all
changed
the
their name.
time.
It was the Division of Rehab Services now. It used to be the
DVR.
Department of Rehabilitation.
DHS, DVR, DRS, DORS. I mean, I've been, it's ridiculous how
changed their
many
name.
counselors they've.
But it's the Vocational Rehabilitation Agency for the state of Illinois is what it is.
So talk to the case managers for your sons and daughters if you have students who are in high school or out of high school and they're not open. Like I said, there may be a reason for them to not be open, but there also might be that no one's ever asked that question and you would really want to make that linkage if you can.
Yeah,
And I
that's...
was going to say that too. I think that's what's so important about this group of parents here is that all those services and supports that were just up there, our programs are pretty well aware of all that, and we give that information to our parents, but sometimes not all the high school programs have the information or know some of the application process.
And our...
So you need to ask for those, because some of those programs you need to get in before you're 21. Okay, or it gets very hard to apply and be accepted. Things like SSI and Medicaid.
Right.
And
Right.
so if people aren't asking you if you've registered for funds yet, you need to start saying, don't I need to be doing this? Or
But
does
you'll
my
need
child-"
to know what you qualify for. Our
Right.
kids have more significant cognitive disabilities that are in our programs. That would be people that would
It's
qualify
kind
for
of a
the
given.
funds. It would
Mhm.
be,
Yeah.
you have to match an IQ score with an ICAP score to meet the quality. You'll have to talk to someone, but talk to your
Case manager.
case manager and ask about that. Does my child qualify for that? If not, you can, email one of us at the end. Our emails will be up there and we can kind of give you, but we'll have to ask you questions about that would be on your child's MDC to see if they would qualify for that.
And just have one other comment to make. In our programs, we have our students for the same students with the same case managers for years. And I understand in the high schools that is not necessarily the case. And sometimes the case managers don't ever see the students in the classes. So that's a reality, but as parents, you may really need to be getting a hold of that case manager who may not, unfortunately, know your students real well. But you really need to be advocating because these are some really good services that could be available to you guys. And
But
we
they are limited in the state of Illinois.
They are
Yep.
very limited.
So-
Yep.
Not much out there.
Yep. And you want to take advantage of what you can while they're still in school because like Jay was saying, when you're done, I mean, when you're out of school, it's really bleak.
Dries up. Yeah. Some big things, we talked about this in the previous one. If your child is going to school, college, moving on to college, or if they're in the work environment and need to ask for accommodations, what's called reasonable accommodations on their job, they need to be able to explain their disability to other people. And they need to ask for help. Those colleges do not go and seek people out. You have to go and be able to tell them. You have to say, I have this type of disability. These are the supports that I will need.
And
If
this
they
is my
cannot do that, they
documentation.
will not get those supports. So those are things that they need to start training while they're still younger, to be able to speak for themselves and what they might need. Again, telling them what assistance they might need and qualify after school. You need to start talking about that with the case managers, people, and to know, because there's different criteria. If the student is going to require SSI, they have to know well in advance that they can only have a $2,000 in their
Assets.
name. Assets. If they have over that, they will not qualify for that. So if you have had a savings account for them and it's over $2,000, they won't get SSI. So you have to start thinking
college
about that.
accounts.
Or college account.
College
well,
saver accounts,
yeah.
trusts.
Trusts, yeah, there's different things.
And there's some really good presentations out there of people who go through guardianship and SSI and all the information. So if you need some, references or information, email us and we can give you some people
Right.
to go listen to.
Yep. These are some things that you might be thinking about for the future, where they're going to go, what directions they're going to go, college employment, where they're going to be, which way are they going to be working. These are things to really think about of how, that a lot of people forget. How are they going to get around and transport in the future? People sometimes forget that component that the that the schools provided that bus to get people around, that doesn't exist in colleges or after they exit school. So how can they drive? Can they afford a car? Can they, what options are in their community? Every community has a different kind of a transportation system that's open to them, but there's different ways to qualify for each one. So you have to know what it is, and they can be used for different purposes. Some are only used for work, some are only used for so you have to know what's available and how to connect with that, how to apply for them, those kind of things to plan. How to get to the college. So if they're going to college, are they going to be able to transport themselves, or is mom and dad going to have to quit their job to drive them to school, which many students that come to me think that's what their parents will do for them. But, it's a little shock for them.
And
when
pay
they say,
for them
"No,
too
maybe
while
not."
they're there.
So, that's again, will they need somebody? How much is it going to cost them? Each one of those programs is different. And are they really going to need them, for the future? What kind of things will they need?
Since we're part of such a large school district, I just have learned in the last couple of months being new to the program that Elgin really has a gem that I think a lot of people outside of Elgin doesn't know about. Is we have this public transportation system down here that is so accessible to a lot of our students and adults that makes them independent. And I know a lot of the communities outside of Elgin does not have that, but it's just something to keep in mind that we have the public bus that they can, once they learn how to use it, can get them all over this town, and then there's so many resources
Yeah, what she said.
available.
What Melissa was just saying is I've had some students that exited school, from, and that lived in another community that didn't have that. They chose to move to Elgin simply because of that transportation
Yeah.
system. To be
And
able to get
affordable
around
housing.
and affordable and more affordable housing, right? So here's the things. Am I ready to go to college? What do I want to be? People heard us talk before. One of the big things to me is, why do you want to go to college and what's the purpose? Is there a degree? Is there a job? What is it? Sometimes some kids think, yep, that's what I'm supposed to do. But they don't have a focus or a reason to go to college. They just think, yeah, that's what I'm supposed to do. I'm supposed to go to college. Why? What's the thing, so that you can also focus that, to say, are you going to be this? Are you going to be that? Are you going to be seeking a degree? Are you going for a trade school to get a certificate? You have to know where they're going to go and what kind of supports are there and what things are going to be there. Do they have to take placement tests for any of these programs. Am I ready? Did I go there to visit? Again, what supports will you need? How are you going to get there? We often take the kids to read the books just so that they can see the level, to make sure that they are comfortable with it. Because there's sometimes, if we have some kids that want to go into nurses assistant programs
CNA.
or things like that, CNAs, and then they start reading the book and they're like, this might be more than I want to do, so they might be looking at some other job that's very similar but might not require the degree. How do they apply? When did they apply? Did they get accepted? Because often students just think, yep, I just go. They don't know the process. There's no special ed in college. Again, we talked about that before. Nobody's going to come and offer you help. You're going to have to be able to tell them, is there a specialized program? How are you going to pay for it? We just talked about some of that. Are you seeking the degree? Can you organize yourself and your schedule needed to get in college life? So what that one is a lot of kids, at high school, it tells you this is where I have to be, and this is the classes that I'm going to go, first period, second period, third period. When you go to college or in your life, that doesn't happen anymore. A student has to be able to fill that up and organize that. Do they have those organizational skills, or do they need to work on those organizational skills so they'll be successful before they get there? How will I get there and get around on your own? That's inside navigating the school itself as well as the community to get there, things like that. What jobs have I tried already? You want to go?
Yeah, I guess, yeah.
Yeah.
When you're talking about especially that 18 to 22-year-old and you're thinking long range, what are you going to be doing when you're not in school any longer? And in the first group I talked that I like to have the students think about when they're 25, where will they be living, what will their lives be like? So obviously working is really going to be a very big part of their life as they're getting ready to exit public school. So do they need job coaching, which is somebody to actually go to the job with them, break it down, help support them and teach them how to do that work. STEP class is a program that's offered through the high school. It's all about careers, learning about jobs for kids who are still in high school. If they have a job, it's actually an extra credit that they can get towards graduation requirements. So that's important to know. We talked about DHS and DRS. It's important for the kids to have an idea, what skills do they possess and how do the skills match to the jobs? If you want to be, I've had a situation where somebody thought one of my students would be a really nice bagger because she was very short, very friendly. But when you think about her skills, she's very short, does not have long arms, reaching and carrying all those the groceries coming down on the conveyor belt would be very, very difficult for her. So that reality check of matching, what am I good at, what are my skills, what are my attributes, what are my capabilities, what am I not good at, what can't I do, and how do those things match up?
Right.
These are really important things to be thinking about when you're looking at a job.
And that goes as well, with students especially that have autism or are on the autism spectrum. What is the environmental stimulation? It's called an ecological inventory to figure out what's going on in that environment where they might want to work or interact in, and are they capable of filtering that and adjusting to what might be needed, or do they need training on how to deal with that prior to getting there? Okay.
Through all of the high schools, there should be some capability for students to get some job training. It could lead to maybe leaving school early and going out to a job during the day. It could lead to supports with getting a job that happens outside of the school day. One of the things you want to find out is, can you fade the supports? If you need somebody with you the whole time to get through that job, then you're not demonstrating the skills to be an independent worker, and that's a whole different ball game. But if you can, under what criteria, what needs to be in place so that we can fade those skills? These are all of the things that happen during a vocational training program. We find out what supports a student needs so that we can make accurate decisions about, can they work alone in the community? Because it's so important to living independently.
And fade that support, because we know from research that's out there, when you remove supports, students regress. So you have to almost overtrain a student because we know they're going to fade back. They're going to lose some of the skills once that constant support isn't there. So the coach or the person providing support starts to fade back. Then you develop what's called natural supports and try and get people in the environment that will supplement those things that the job coach used to do.
And sometimes that becomes the role of the families also
Right.
to kind of keep tabs. Oh, there's a new manager. Oh, that may mean as the family member, you need to get in there and make sure the manager knows that your son or daughter has a disability. I had a student who was working at Burger King, and the manager did not realize he was a special ed student, and he came this close to being fired because Josh had the miseries and just went all the time like this. And the manager thought, well, this kid's just kind of a pain. So somebody said, well, you know he's in a special ed program. No, I didn't know, the manager said.
Right.
So you always want to watch out for that.
So one of the big one to me too is down there on the bottom, this options for future training and placement. Will it fit into our life? So don't forget that all the supports that you had in school are not there anymore. So if you work during the day, how is your student going to get to work? Are you going to be able to get them there? Will it fit into, will I have a neighbor? Or do they have to work at a different set of hours that's going to fit into when I can do that without having to adjust my life, right?
Can your
Is
student
it-
be home alone
Can
if you
your
are at
student
work
be
and
home
he's
alone?
working
Exactly.
part-time?
Those are all those things trying to think to, and now that will be kids with maybe more significant disabilities that need the extra support, but preparing for that and seeing what kind of things while they're still in school to learn some of that stuff through the transition program. It would also be, can they get to that job? You know, if they live in Streamwood, should they really be working on the west side of Elgin, where they're going to have to, take a long
Cab ride.
cab ride or something that, stuff like that. So those are kind of things you want to think through when you're thinking those processes.
I think we covered it.
The sheltered
Well,
workshop you want to talk
Yeah,
about?
the one in our area would be the Elgin Training Center, which is offered through the Association for Individual Development for students who are not capable of working on their own, but who are maybe still interested in gaining vocational training. When Jay was talking about the cost of services, I was just over there with a family the other day. It is $10.39 an hour for someone to go there and be a part of the training and continue to get vocational training if they are not selected off of the PUNs and they don't have any funding
From the state. Yeah.
from the state. So again, and we just keep talking about why you want to take advantage of every service that's offered from the school district, because there is no additional cost to you, and the costs are very much, they're very high. I mean, $10.39 is not terrible, but that's a lot of money.
Well, you're working
You
out
know.
for 5 hours, $50 a day, $60
Yeah.
a day for,
Yeah.
how much will it be per week? And then if the student's social security check, right now the top that a person can get from SSI is $710 a month. So will it really cover that? $721, yeah. So that's,
It's going up next year, though.
yes, it's going up to.
$7.39.
Yep.
Yeah, minimum wage will screw with that.
Again, working, where will I work? What will I do? What options
Okay.
are open to me finding and securing a job? Who can help me? Those kind of things. We covered some of this stuff, but you can read that. It's also in your handout.
Yep.
This is the big one. We've been saying this over and over again. After school exits, there are few to no services in the state. And you have to have a narrow way that you can qualify for those services. So families have to be prepared for that and be ready to provide the support or have systems in place for their students. You also have to, students are responsible for, or families and students are responsible for paying those. It's called fee for services, like what Lori was just talking about the sheltered workshop. That would include if a student still needs job coaching or if they need to have vocational placement training. If there's somebody trying to find them a job, they're going to be paying for those services.
Maybe.
Maybe,
Yeah.
right. It could be DRS
Could
may
be.
sometimes pay for it. So then you must self-disclose, and again, that gets back to being able to describe your disability. People are afraid to talk about a student's disability. They really need to be able to advocate for themselves. Having a disability should not be something they're trying to hide. They need to explain it, and ask for the assistance. If they don't explain it and tell people, they aren't going to get it, right?
And hopefully anyone who has put their name on the PUNS list is very aware that if your name does get, your child's name gets pulled, that you, you know, apply for that and then determine if you need those services or not, because your name won't get pulled again, and then you kind of,
Right.
you're done.
And you have
Right?
6 months
Yeah.
To try and-
to begin your
Make a phone
application.
call, take it serious and see what it is they're eligible for.
You guys
Yeah,
know
you have
the
to-
pass agencies in our area are Day One Network, PACT Incorporated, and Community Alternatives Unlimited, which is just the little section of Hoffman Estates up there. But the other two, if it's DuPage County, it's PACT Incorporated. Everything else in U46, except for the tiny little part of Hoffman up there, is Day
Day
One
One.
Network. Okay, and that has to be a cognitive disability. It's the determination is based on the IQ score and an ICAP score, a combination of the two.
So for LDBD kids,
That
there's
isn't
really
an option.
there's just nothing available when your students are out of school.
Again, these are things to prepare and think about for the future. What should you be doing now? You can look at that list of things you can start working on and talking to and visiting, you know, exploring. Try and do that while you still have the support through the schools. What do I need to prepare for in the future? You know, again, it goes back to that, really, I can't stress how much the student needs to know about their disability. When they come to us and they're like, I didn't know I had a disability, I'm like, well, we're going to talk about it. And it's a disability isn't a bad thing. It just means it's a different way to learn, right? And trying to explain that to them and to get that so that they are prepared and can get help and things that they need for the future. Do I know how my disability affects it? Do they know that they learn in a different way and they might need support for a little while to learn things, repetition practice? Do they learn things better from people showing them how to do it, how to read it, how someone talking to them? Is it verbal, is it visual, is it kinesthetic, which means, you know, movement and doing it? Can I explain the disability to others and ask for the supports that I may need in school and in life? Is failing always bad? We talked about this in the last one. Trying things and not being successful, it's only a means of trying to evaluate what it is and re-evaluating what you want for your own future.
So if they really want that job as a bagger and they won't let it up and they get the opportunity, let them do it.
Right.
It-
You know, it would be like Lori is our resident computer specialist. That's a joke between it, but so her going to become the technology person for, you know, and going for that probably wouldn't be the best idea because that's not her forte, you know. But her to try that out, and she knows that that's not her forte, so she would say, no, that's not for me. So except, you know, trying to go through that, it's the same for any kid. You know, of going through that, trying it out, saying, it didn't work for me. I got to know what I'm going to do for the future. Okay?
It's only a failure if you didn't learn something from it.
It's exactly, yeah.
And learn. I mean, when we fail, and I think that you've heard us say this, but when you fail is really when you learn the most.
Yep.
In the SWEP program, the students have to budget their own money, and if they spend it on something else and they can't go play laser tag, that's kind of a moment of, well, how come I can't go play? Well, you spent all your money.
I can't eat lunch today.
Right, any number of things. But we learn so much when we have the little hiccups in our life.
Yeah. Again, here's where am I going to live? These are some things, you know, if they're going to live on their own, things that they need to figure out if they can do this. Can they manage their own money? Can they be responsible with their own money? You know, if you're sending your kid to school with that envelope and say, hand this to the teacher, they really aren't learning how to manage their money. If they lose it that day and they forget they didn't get to eat, is that a horrible thing, or is that a learning experience where they're going to say, I'm not going to do that next time. I'm going to be a little more responsible and put my money in my pocket and learn from that, right? So those are some things that you learn along the way. What kind of financial supports are available? What other supports do I need to be successful? Where can they get those who can help me? or am I going to live alone, or am I going to live with somebody else? Can I live at home without, or can I be in my own house without supervision? You know, this might be something where students might need a little more assistance. So as they're getting closer to graduating, you have to think, school isn't going to be there to take up that big portion of the day. Can they be at your house with nobody there? Can they be there for, you know, while you're at work for that 8 hours if the rest of the day isn't filled? That's things you have to prepare for and start thinking about, right? And start working on those supports. What
And
could
you-
I be
you-
learning now to be more independent?
You need to be talking about that, because I've had many students who say, well, I'm going to live with my mom and dad forever.
Right.
Like, do your mom and dad know that? Because, you know, so you really need to be talking about this. What is your plan? What is their plan? Again, kind of just like with jobs in college, this very much needs to be discussed.
And we have just the opposite of that. Where mom and, you know, says, oh no, they're going to live with me forever. And the kid is saying, oh no, 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 no. I'm not living with you forever, you know. So then the parents have that really, oh, I have
Right.
to start thinking about something else,
Yeah.
you know. To
Right.
Again, can they, what can they be learning to be more independent? Can they cook for themselves? Because if they're home, can they find something to eat because you're at work, you know? Can they do this? And what kind of things do they need to do? Do they know the safety rules for the home and the community? Can they be safe? Do they know who to talk to, who not to talk to? Can they recognize potential dangers? Can they do those kind of things, you know? So
Yeah, you skipped to the paying bills, and I
Ah.
would say too, have them start paying bills, and I think the easiest one to start with is the cell phone bill. 'Cause a lot of times they don't make that connection that things cost money, because we're always just giving.
Right.
And so what's really important to teenagers right now is the cell phone. So if they have one, start making them pay for it,
right? Yep.
or you know, a
It's
portion
quarter
of it.
to 10
just so they
too,
start
almost. We
making
gotta
those
fly through
connections.
some of these. Yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to just kind of go through, this is almost done. These are some things to start thinking of the different ages. These are some of the things to start applying for at the different ages. Those are all in your handout. That's part of the community. These are things that, that future and that bullseye of where they want to be, how they're going to get there. Again, it's changing from looking at their deficits and what they can't do to looking at what they can do and what will make them successful in life. So these are my skills. These are not things that I can't do, but this is what I'm good at and where will it take me. You know, the IEP prior to the transition years was focusing on what's the next level of instruction. You know, it was next year, what's that is, and as you get older, it's preparing for what life is after high school. It's looking at all that kind of stuff. It's not setting unrealistic goals, you know? It's not ignoring limitations and constraints or limiting to current services available. It's not a one-time event. It's a process over many years and looking at it. It's not a segmented view of a person's life either. These are some of the things that would be in your transition plan. You really need to have an education and or training goal, an employment goal, and then daily living, which in most cases, most people will need it. I have many students come, many families come to our transition program and ask if their child without a disability can get enrolled so that they can learn how to budget their money, how to
Yeah.
get around,
How to get a
take care of
job.
themselves. They said, can I put my kid just got out of college and still can't do this. Can you teach it? You know, so they often say that they think
Yeah.
every kid, you know, could do
And I
that.
think too, like, we've talked a lot about work, but I think that whole play component of life is
Filling
something
up
we
their day.
Rec leisure.
It's a
focus on
leisure.
too, and getting them to make those plans with their peers, and this is the time for them to be connecting with friends and just learning how to go to the library and hang out for an hour.
And that's
You
a
know,
big thing, yeah.
Be at the
budgeting,
mall.
the transportation, or
It's
going.
filling their day, because their day is going to be empty, and will that, you know, we talked about how they'll regress, right? Those are a lot of things that you have to really be aware
And
of.
encouraging it now, so they get good at it now, so they can go and do it.
And it starts small with things that you're comfortable with, and then you build on that. Dropping off, going to the movies, you go to the movie next door, they go to the movie, you know, it gets to the point where you just slow down and kick them out of the car and they go to the movies, and ride the city bus to go to the movies.
These
So-
are things that would be included in different areas. This area here is going to tell you some things to think about to start having your kids do to prepare for transition and be more independent, you know. And all those things will lead to them being more independent. Start early, be persistent. These are things that are getting there. This gets back about keeping those employment. There's guardianship and alternatives. Many people think that as soon as a student turns 18, they need to get guardianship right away. It's a personal choice and what your lifestyle and your student needs. You need to look at all your options. Social Security you'll look at. These are all things that should be considered when doing that. Keep your documents organized. Never give away your last copy. That summary of performance you will get when you exit school, which will help. You want to keep that. It's a requirement that everyone have a summary of performance. And they exit with that. It's a document that you should be able to give to those adult service providers, the colleges, those kind of things that connects with all those, that has a lot of the information that they will need.
It compiles all the documents from the school, like your last IEP, evaluations and things which were done. And like in my program, we give them the students in a binder. So I'm not sure what you guys do, but
You give them it in a folder.
okay, yeah. So, and that's something you would want to. Everybody, you should all have it the day before you
Keep
leave
track of
school. So every student
Sometime
should
before
have
you
one.
leave school, right?